This happened years ago. I was about 14 or 15. I'm 26 now. I still remember it vividly. My friend and I were at my aunt's house alone for the night while her and my mum went to go and see this band play. Where my aunt lived wasn't the safest of places. I've actually had other scary things happen in the same mobile home park, but this night was definitely the worst. My friend and I had been drinking and smoking a little bit since we had the place to ourselves. At one point, we decided to step outside to look for some cigarette butts that my brother would leave behind. Stupid, I know. Anyway, my aunt lived on the corner lot, so where her house sat, you could circle around it easily. So we're in front of the house when this car full of guys pulls up and starts saying inappropriate things to us. We ignore it and start to walk towards the back of the house where my aunt had a little walkway leading that way. Well, these guys continue acting sketchy and circle the house as they disappear out of sight. My friend and I dart into the house through the side door since we are freaked out at this point. We lock everything and turn the lights off. Well, sure as shit they come back. I can hear them circling the house in their car, and soon enough I hear them park and 4 separate car doors slam shut. Before I know it, they are banging on the mobile home, all over the windows and doors. I can see them wiggling the doorknob. All at the same time they are screaming and laughing and saying things like,
"We found you now."
I don't know why I didn't call the cops, but I did call my mum, and she didn't fucking believe me. I grab a knife, and I'm full on prepared to fight for my life. It was terrifying. My mum and aunt ended up calling a neighbour, and he came out to check on us, but by that point the group of guys had left. I'm sure they were just trying to scare us, but how did they know no one else was home? My aunt also had a peeping Tom for a year or so there, and I've been followed by a car at that complex as well. It's a really fucked up place to live. So, a few important things before I tell my story. My kitchen has a big window next to a door, and on the right side you can look out at our backyard. It doesn't have a curtain. I always sit at our dinner table to work on school things and stuff, which is placed in front of the large window. We also have 2 dogs, Shih Tzu, Maltese mix. They're very sweet, but they bark a lot when they hear something outside our house. When this happened, I was home alone with my little brother, who's 13. My neighbours have a cat that walks around our house a lot. With all of that said, this is the story. A few months ago, my parents decided to go on a little holiday together for 2 days. My brother and I were fine with being home alone, and we didn't want our grandparents to babysit us. My parents agreed, and they left that Saturday morning. The whole day was just normal. Everything went like it usually does. When it was about 11:30 p.m, my brother and I went upstairs to sleep. I put out the lights and locked the windows and doors. Everything still seemed usual. At about 2 a.m, I woke up to the sound of my dogs loudly barking. They do this pretty often because of the neighbour's cat walking around our house. I thought nothing of it and went back to sleep. Usually the dogs stop barking in about 5 minutes, but this time they didn't stop. I thought this was really weird. I got out of bed and checked on my brother. He was still asleep. I decided not to wake him and walked downstairs myself. My dogs were barking towards the large kitchen window. That wasn't that weird since the cat walks in our garden a lot too. I put a light on and walked around the kitchen to see if something was off. Everything seemed fine. I then checked if maybe my dogs were in pain or something, and they were fine. I looked outside to see if the cat was walking around, and the cat was nowhere to be seen. This made me feel very uneasy. After this, I didn't feel like sleeping anymore, so I sat down at the dinner table to watch some YouTube and chill out a bit. After like 10 minutes, I started to feel uneasy again. I had this weird feeling of being watched from the window. I decided it was better to shut the lights off and go back upstairs. Since I didn't feel safe, I grabbed a kitchen knife to protect myself if anything was about to happen. When I got upstairs, I checked my brother again. He was still safe and asleep. I sat down in our hallway so I could hear things downstairs better. After a while, my dog started barking again. At this point, I was so scared that I was almost crying. I decided to call the police and then walk downstairs. The police told me they would be there in about 15 minutes. I walked downstairs as silently as I could. When I got in our hallway downstairs, I noticed that the light by our front door was on. This only goes on when people walk by, but I was really stupid and shrugged it off as being the neighbour's cat walking by. When I got back into the kitchen, my dogs were still barking. I turned on the lights and sat down again. Not a minute after I sat down, I noticed movement in our garden behind the large window. I just froze. I couldn't move. My dogs started barking like crazy because they could see the movement too. A pretty large person was moving slowly towards the door. I still had the knife, but I am 15 and petite. The person looked a lot larger than me, and I surely couldn't win against him. He had to have seen me because he started moving faster towards the door. Fortunately, at this point the police arrived. They knocked on the front door, and I sprinted towards it and let them in. The man probably ran away, because when the police investigated the backyard he was gone. Later, with the help of a police dog, the man was arrested and charged for attempted burglary. He apparently was arrested a few years ago because of attempted assault. My brother and I didn't get hurt and everything turned out fine, but I still am too scared to stay home alone. To the crazy man that tried to break into our house at night, let's not meet. In October 2007, my husband and I were in a really bad car accident. I sustained serious internal injuries, and physically I was a mess. I don't have a lot of memories from that first year after the accident, so this one is really clear, being one of the few that I have. Because we pretty much lost everything financially due to the accident, my husband took a job in Kuwait while I moved to OKC to be near my doctors. So it was pretty rough with my injuries, and we also had a 7-year-old daughter at the time who was such a huge help to me. Still is. So here I am, living in a city I'm not familiar with injuries to my body that I honestly shouldn't have survived, and I've got to be responsible for my 7-year-old little girl. I asked my sister to come stay with me to help, and she did. After unpacking me, she really became concerned with the fact that I had a sliding glass door and no way to really brace it shut if anyone broke the lock. So she carted me off to Lowe's or Home Depot or something and bought a pipe and had them cut it to size. She made me keep the other half of it in my bedroom. This was a wise decision. After 4 weeks, my sister went back home and I was left to care for my daughter on my own again, while still a physical mess who needed more surgery, but my apartment was completely unpacked by then. The night this happened, I've got my little girl in bed asleep, lights are off, I've taken my meds, and I'm out cold. I was awake instantly, sat straight up in my bed, which was physically impossible for me at the time, and immediately reached out and grabbed that pipe. I had that pipe in one hand and my phone in the other, and I started creeping down the hallway. I peeked in on my little girl, sound asleep, and eased her door shut. I continued into my front room, and that's when I heard it. Somebody was trying to get my front door open. Immediately, I called 911 and told them what was going on. I explained to the dispatcher that I was in no physical condition to fight someone off, but I would if I needed to. I then quietly eased up to my door and peeked out the peephole and recognized the guy. This guy used to wait for me to come out of my apartment with my daughter, walk into the parking lot by my car, and then try to talk to me. I had asked management to talk to him and ask him to stop. I made it clear several times that I was not interested and was married. I saw red. You dare to try and break into my home with my child? I was going to kill him. I backed up and quietly told the operator who it was and that I was going to beat him to death. Rage and adrenaline are a heady mixture. I admit it wasn't smart. I put my phone down, still connected, and proceeded to unlock and wrench that door open at the same time I was swinging. You have never seen somebody move so fast. We were on the 2nd floor and I don't think his feet touched until he hit the actual ground. He was gone, but in that split second of eye contact, he knew I was going to destroy him. The police never did come to my apartment that night. They caught the guy a few days later when he finally came back to his apartment, and then management told me that they evicted him. That was the last I heard on that. I'm still pissed off about it though. Shortly after I had more surgery to finish repairing the damage to my body, I moved to Georgia to be near my mother. So, to the creepy guy trying to break into my apartment, let's not meet again. This happened to my father in the house I used to live in with him. He still lives in the same city, which is a pretty decent neighborhood. However, it's about half an hour outside of a larger city known for its murder rate and heroin problem. The house he was living in was occupied by a single mum and her 2 teenage kids, but the basement was converted to an apartment, which is the space my dad rented. I used to live there and slept in one of the upstairs bedrooms, but by this time I had been living with my then boyfriend for a few months. Anyway, my dad was in the house all alone one night as the mum and her kids were away on a skiing trip when he awoke from his sleep to the sound of footsteps upstairs. He texted the owner of the house asking her if anyone was supposed to stop by to check on the house but received no answer. He texted both of the kids as well to make sure, and again, no reply. Still hearing the footsteps, he grabbed his shotgun from his cabinet and proceeded to walk up the stairs to the main part of the house. At the top of the stairs there is a door that led into the kitchen, meaning there was at least a door between whoever was in the house and my dad. My dad cocked his shotgun and he said whoever was upstairs made a pretty quick getaway out the door. Once my dad no longer heard anyone in the house, he went through the door into the kitchen and poked around. No one was in there and nothing was missing. He never found out who came in the house or for what. My guess is that it was someone who knew the family and knew they were gone but didn't know my dad lived there and would be home. However, my dad's texts never got answered. No one asked if he was okay or seemed to care that someone was in the house, nor did they say yes, someone was given the key to get in. One thing that rubs me the wrong way though is that the house had obviously been cased before. Several times my dad would find footsteps in the morning in the driveway around the cars. He was always the first one up to go to work for the day, so they didn't belong to anyone living in the house. One morning we found out that my dumb self forgot to lock my car that previous night. Whoever it was leaving the footsteps rooted through my car and left the door open. Shortly before my dad moved out, a teenage girl was murdered in her home not 2 miles from the neighborhood my dad was in. This really shocked the community. Even though nothing happened to my dad that night, it always makes me wonder what would have happened had he not had his gun or had the family been home. This occurred on the last day of Christmas break. It was around 3 in the morning and I was sitting in my living room, eating and watching one of my favourite shows, Supernatural, when I heard something at the back door. Someone was tapping on the sliding glass door. Not quite a knock, but a very harsh tap. At first, I was furious because I thought my brother had somehow locked himself outside and I wasn't about to get up to help him. A few moments later, my dog started growling and barking, which scared me because he would never bark or growl at any of my family members. When he ran to the back door, I was thrown into a panic attack. I had no idea what to do because my parents were asleep and completely unaware of what was happening in their home. I didn't know what to do. My mind was flooded with worst-case scenarios and all the different ways someone could kill me or kidnap me. I realized that if I didn't do anything, somebody might just waltz right into my house. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and slowly made my way to the back door. I walked over to the sliding glass door where I heard the tapping come from, and I tried to look outside to see if anyone was there. It was too dark and I couldn't see a thing. I used the flashlight on my phone in an attempt to see out the window, but it didn't work, so I turned to look out the actual back door and it was open. I was petrified. I'd never been so scared in my entire life. Even more worst-case scenarios started cramming themselves into my mind, like, he's already inside, or he's right behind me. I immediately spun around and swung the poker, making myself look like an idiot when there wasn't anybody standing behind me. I then realized that someone had to have opened that door and they might be waiting out there waiting for me to investigate. After I thought that, I knew that I wasn't going to go anywhere near that door. Instead, I threw the poker at the door in order to get it closed enough that I felt comfortable closing and locking it. I ran over to the door and locked it as quickly as I could before picking the poker up off the ground. I tried once again to look out the window, and I could very faintly make out something or someone moving its top or running away. I immediately ran to my parents' room to tell them that somebody just tried to break into our house, and they completely ignored me. I told them that somebody had opened the back door and that I saw somebody running away. My mother responded with, "Did you lock the back door?" She wasn't even the slightest bit worried, which scared me even more. For the next 2 weeks, I refused to go anywhere near my back door after it got dark. That was the most horrifying experience of my life, and I don't think anything will ever compare to those 4 minutes. So to whoever was outside my house, let's not meet.